Hi everyone. I want to talk about subtle signs that you are healing from being a scapegoat. I thought this video might be of help to those who have felt like they have been a scapegoat all their lives or have become a scapegoat and they've been working on it very hard, and it may be hard to see the progress. But I've seen many that I've worked with make great progress in recovery for being treated as a scapegoat in their family. Family scapegoat people, just like the history old notion about scapegoating, sending a goat out into the wilderness with all the sins of Israel on it, and that we're taking all of our sins, putting them on you, and sending them out into the desert. Families do the same thing. They take their anger, their pain, their discomfort, their dysfunction, put it on this family member so they no longer have to feel it or deal with it anymore. And it's a similar process. And often families are not even aware that's happening. Now, it feels very justified to them, very justified, but they don't see what's underneath it. They don't really see what's going on. But it seems very right to them. And also, it brings in a lot of benefits to them if they scapegoat certain people. There can be some benefits. And so, what are some ways what are some of those signs that says, hey, maybe I am getting a little better? First, I think about it less. I'm thinking about being scapegoated far less than I used to. Maybe I still catch myself. Maybe I still think about it some. But boy, it's not like the 24/7, and the scapegoating being triggered every 15 minutes. And if we are obsessing about it or thinking about it less, then that's a sign we may be healing. It's just not as important as it used to be. And so that's where I start gaining some internal boundaries or distance from the family or from this role that is just so, can I say Coca-Cola? If you've watched some of my videos, I talk about how we get accused of things. We are distorted when people call us names or say things we've done, which we haven't. It's all just Coca-Cola. They're calling us a Coca-Cola. And how can I be upset with someone who calls me a Coca-Cola? It's like, it's so ridiculous. Do you know how silly you sound? Why should I be upset about them calling me something that isn't even possible or true? We feel more normal and see more of the family's distortion and their gaslighting, scapegoating. Because to scapegoat, you have to gaslight. You don't scapegoat out of the truth. You scapegoat with all the bad. Israel didn't take a goat and send it out into the, wilderness by putting all the good thoughts and true thoughts on it. No, they got all the negative sins, negative distortion, bad things on it and sent it out to absolve them of their sins. And so if we start to heal, we start to feel a little more normal and go, wait a minute, I'm not this crazy guy they keep talking about. That's not even who I am. And they are distorting so badly that I kind of get a little more distance from it and distance from the gaslighting, which is that hidden manipulation that they hope will take place. That somehow I can take 2% of a truth and make it this big gaslighting distortion event. And there may be 2% of truth, but that 98% is not true. But we might get caught up in that early on in our life. As we begin to grow, we begin to feel more normal. That, wait a minute, I'm not who they say I am. I just don't even know if I could be who they say I am, even if I chose to. Oh, well, you're just after the money. It's like, what? Inheritance or something like that. It's like, I've never been after the money. That's not me. That's not, actually, it may be their projection, which is what's so common in narcissistic families. Whenever someone accuses you of something, they probably are revealing something about themselves, especially if it's distorted. And so we tend to feel more normal as we continue in our recovery from being a scapegoat. Another sign that we may be healing is you may be criticizing your family less. You just don't need to talk about how bad your family is or how they lie about you or how they treat you. Or you just don't feel like you need to talk about that all the time. You're reducing how you need to criticize your family and to blame them. And yeah, but they're all wrong. They treat me as a scapegoat. Those things may all be fact, but that doesn't mean I want it to be obsessional with me. I want to grow beyond that, and that I don't need to criticize them. If they're going to hold on to their scapegoating of me, hey, that's their right. Everybody has a right to be wrong, but there are consequences. It would be very difficult to have a good relationship or a close one, or there may be distance involved. There may even be low contact or no contact. That's all I can do. And I'm not choosing it. I feel kind of pushed into doing that by their dysfunctional and toxic behavior. And so we may find ourselves kind of not criticizing them as much. If you want more training on this, I've got more training down in the online program in the description below. Your New Road to Self. That's 45 years of my experience I've tried to bring to this online program with exercises and other perks that come along with it. Also, down there in the description, I have a free training, totally free. Just sign up for it and just watch it. And it's yours. It's called Gaining the Self You Were Never Allowed to Have. So, continuing with signs we may be getting better and maybe healing some as a scapegoat, we begin to see more how my family is caught in this mess kind of as much as I am. They're caught in their own distortions. It is a system failure, and that they're not all just sitting around and making these individual decisions and then having a committee meeting about it. The system that's unhealthy is drawing them into the scapegoating effect. And that, hey, my aunt may have negative thoughts about me because of what she's been told about how I treated my mother, let's say, giving that as an example. She's not sitting down and evaluating that for herself. She's getting caught up in the scapegoating dynamic and this cabal that's emotionally based in the family. I may not like it, and I may not like her thinking about me that way. I'm not so sure how totally personal that is. She's just caught up in this mess. And this is a systems problem. And when I think systems, I tend to calm down more rather than everybody's just out to get me. Now, I will have to say that, people who say, well, the FBI is after me, occasionally the FBI is after you. But most of the time, that's probably a distortion. And so I think that's true with scapegoating as well. And I think the more unhealthy the scapegoating is, the more protection we do need to have for self-protection. We do need to do self-care even more. But if I think more along the lines of systems thinking, I tend to see myself recovering more from that scapegoating role that I've been in. I also begin to realize that the emotional process will have to change before the narrative, the story about me, the projection that's going on of the scapegoating will change. It's not like somebody comes along and tells all these people who are scapegoating you in the family, hey, you're wrong about scapegoating Jerry or Mary or Fred or Bob or Susie. You're wrong for doing that, and that is not correct. Now, why won't they go, oh my gosh, I think I am wrong. I'm glad they told me that, and now I'm not going to scapegoat Mary anymore. Why don't they have that immediate experience of that? Because they've been connecting and someone's been trying to convince them or giving evidence of this dysfunction and toxicity mentally. But the problem is emotional processly, if I can say that. It's the emotional process. And do you know what that requires? A conversion, hitting bottom. It's much like with an alcoholic or addict. You can tell them all day, this is really killing you. This is terrible. And I'm not saying you shouldn't tell an alcoholic or addict. Your addiction may kill you, I'm not saying you shouldn't say that, but generally that doesn't make them go, oh, well, you're absolutely right. I'll just stop drinking now because you said it was going to kill me. They have to have a conversion experience. They have to hit bottom where something happens. And many times it can be a nodal event, birth of a child, marriage, a divorce, a death in the family, something kind of huge that kind of shakes the family and might shake some of that scapegoating process free from being so clumped together. And it's usually those kinds of things that change that rather than, well, if they would just go and talk to Jerry, I'm sure Jerry could explain to them how wrong they are. I've told people, I wish that were the case. I'd do it in a heartbeat. I promise you I would. But I just know it's probably not going to happen that way. It does take a conversion. And conversions are pretty major kind of things. Life has to hit them. These lies that they've been telling has to produce some peril or some difficulty. Then that may shake them free from those lies about the scapegoated person. But I've begun to realize that more, and so I'm less personally affected by the role they want to portray me in. And then if somebody says, well, I talked to your family and they just think you've been terrible. Oh, really? Well, that's interesting. If that's what you believe, I think you're believing that at your peril, and I hope you have all the facts. Hope you have a great day. See ya. I'm going to be rest assured in a calm way that I know facts that they don't know. And again, they may not hear me. Some people may, but I'm not going to be defensive about it. Because if I'm defensive, then they're going to go, oh, I'll bet, that family's probably right about Jerry, or right about Mary, or right about Fred, because he's defensive. So, I'll bet they sound guilty. I'm not going to sound guilty. I'm not going to give them that pleasure of me sounding guilty. And then lastly, we can tell that we may be a sign that we're healing from being a scapegoat. We truly see it as a role and not truly who we are. It is a role. And a role is something you play in a play. A role is something you play in a game. A role is something you take on in a business. It's not the true you, it's a role. And we begin to go, I think this is a role. It's not really who I am. It can't be. It's a role. And it's a role I didn't sign up for. I didn't go audition for this role. You didn't need to audition. Your family put you forward for this role and believed you would be the best one to play it. Well, I'm going to start being bad at playing this role. And if I start doing that and seeing it as a role versus truly who I am, then I'm going to go, hey, maybe I'm making some progress on this scapegoating. after all. Thank you for watching. You have a great day, and be wise.